Hello there. Come closer. Allow the clamor of your day, the endless lists and the urgent calls to begin to soften, to recede like we are not embarking on an adventure tonight. There will be no monsters to slay, no labyrinthine puzzles to solve, no kingdoms to win. Instead, we are undertaking a quieter journey, a more profound one, the final one. Imagine, just for a moment, the weight lifting from your limbs, that familiar gravity that has held you to the earth your entire life simply dissolving. Picture the warmth that has animated you, that has fueled your thoughts and your passions, receding gently from your fingertips and your toes, leaving a cool, calm stillness in its wake. What does it feel like, that last quiet breath, when the story you have been living, the one you thought was so important, so central to the universe, simply stops? Picture yourself now, not in your bed, but in another. A simple wooden cot in a small, whitewashed room in Athens, a city that hums with life even as yours is reaching its conclusion. You are Lysinus, the scribe. Your life has been one of ink and parchment, of stories carefully recorded but rarely lived. Your world has been the precise curve of a letter, the satisfying scratch of a reed pen, the smell of papyrus and drying ink. Now the air in your small room grows thin, precious. The sounds from the street market outside, the rhythmic call of a vendor selling olives, the bright, sharp laughter of children playing with a stray dog, the rumble of a cart over cobblestones. They all begin to stretch, to warp, like a note from a lyre held too long, its vibration slowly losing its crispness. Your breath, which has been a steady, unconscious rhythm for decades, the silent metronome of your existence, becomes a guest that has overstayed its welcome, each arrival and departure a conscious effort. There is a final, gentle pressure in your chest. It is not pain, not a dramatic agony. It is just a punctuation mark, a quiet, definitive full stop at the end of a long and perhaps unremarkable sentence. And then you are no longer in the cot. You are above it. You see your own body, a pale and still form under a simple linen sheet, the jaw slightly slack, the hands that held 1,000 pens resting finally by its side. There is no shock. There is no panic. Only a strange, weightless curiosity, as if you are observing a scene from a play for which you have forgotten the script. You are not a ghost, not yet, not in the way the storytellers describe them with their rattling chains and mournful wails. You are a psyche, a wisp, a breath made visible, shimmering faintly in the afternoon light that streams through the narrow window. The ancient poets imagined you as a small, winged thing, a delicate moth fluttering from the lips. But for you, it feels more like being smoke. You are formless, edgeless, a swirl of consciousness unbound. You have no hands to touch the familiar clay water pot on the small wooden table, its surface cool and beaded with condensation. You have no feet to feel the cool, worn stone of the floor. You simply are. You watch as your family comes in. Your wife, her face a mask of weary grief, her movement slow as if she is wading through heavy water. Your son, a young man now trying to be strong, his shoulders set in a rigid line that betrays the tremors running through him. You see their tears, glinting in the sunlight. You hear their whispers, their soft keening, but the sound is muffled, indistinct, as if it is coming from across a great, placid body of water. You are here, and yet you are not. You are a silent observer in the room of your own death, detached from the sorrow that you are the cause of. Their grief is a storm on a distant shore, and you are adrift on a calm, quiet sea. It is a strange and profound loneliness, but it is not a sad one. It is simply the way things are now. For a time you linger, a day perhaps or two. It is difficult to measure the passage of time in this new state. The sun rises and sets, painting the wall in shades of gold and gray, but it feels like a mere shifting of scenery. You watch the rituals, the ancient traditions carried out with a solemn reverence. You watch as the women of your family wash your former body, their hands gentle, their voices murmuring prayers as old as the city itself. You watch as they place a single, small bronze coin, an obol under its tongue. A curious practice, one you have recorded in your histories many times. A payment for a journey you are only now beginning to understand. It all feels distant, a story about someone else, a scribe named Lysinus who once lived in this room. You are only the memory of him, a fading echo. But then, a new presence enters the room. It does not open the heavy wooden door. It does not disturb the dust motes dancing in the sunbeam. It is simply there, in a way that feels more fundamental than the walls or the furniture. A figure cloaked in shadow, yet radiating a strange energy, like the still, electric air after a lightning strike. He is tall and slender, and he carries a staff, the Karakian, a rod of olive wood around which two serpents are intertwined in perfect frozen symmetry. He does not look at your grieving family. He does not acknowledge the still body on the cot. He looks directly at you, at the wisp of smoke, the shimmering breath that is all that remains of you. His eyes, deep within the shadow of his traveler's hat, seem to see not what you were, but only what you are now, a soul ready for transit. And in his gaze, you understand without a word being spoken. It is time to go. He extends a hand that is not quite solid, a shape of shadow and faint light, and you know with a certainty that quiets all curiosity that your final journey has a guide. This is Hermes, the psychopomp, the guide of souls. His expression is neither sad nor joyful, neither kind nor cruel. It is professional. The calm, focused demeanor of a being who has performed this task countless times, for kings and for slaves, for heroes and for scribes. He turns, his traveler's cloak swirling like smoke, and you feel an undeniable, irresistible pull to follow. There is no choice in the matter, no room for hesitation. You are a leaf caught in a current, and he is the river. You drift through the sun-baked clay wall of your home, an act that should be impossible, that should shatter the very laws of nature. Yet it feels entirely natural now, as simple as breathing once was. The vibrant world of Athens, a world you had only ever observed from your window or on brief trips to the market, unfolds around you and then immediately begins to fade. The scent of baking bread from the house next door, a smell that has been a constant comfort your entire life, vanishes from your senses. The sharp, clean tang of olives and brine from the market stalls dissolves into nothingness. The clamor of 1,000 voices bargaining, laughing, arguing, the very sound of life itself, thins and recedes until it is a mere whisper. The brilliant colors of the world, the deep blue of the attic sky, the vibrant dyes of a merchant's tunic, the rich terracotta of the rooftops, all seem to desaturate, bleeding out into 100 subtle shades of gray. You are not walking. You are not flying. You are flowing, a particle in an unseen current, and Hermes moves just ahead, his staff a silent beacon in the growing twilight. Downward, always downward. You are not alone for long. As you descend, moving through the very earth as if it were mist, other wisps of smoke, other psyches, join your silent procession. They emerge from grand villas and humble workshops, from barracks and from sick rooms, each one a faint shimmer of what they once were. You see an old woman, her form still holding the phantom shape of a weaving shuttle in her hands, her movements echoing a lifetime at the loom. You see a young soldier, his ethereal body still defined by the outline of the bronze armor and heavy shield he can no longer carry. A child joins your stream, its form small and flickering, seeming to clutch a wooden toy that is no longer there. No, there is no language here in this place between worlds. There are no names, no histories to exchange. There is only a shared silence. You are all the dead. You are all heading the same way, downward. Always downward. The Greeks did not imagine the afterlife in the sky among the stars. To them, death was a return, a journey into the deep, dark, foundational quiet of the earth. The path, if it can be called a path, grows colder. The phantom sensation is not one that chills your non-existent skin, but rather a coldness that permeates your very essence. The air, which is not truly air, grows thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, something ancient and profound, like the scent of stone that has never seen the sun or felt the warmth of a fire. You pass through vast, echoing caves, through deep fissures in the bedrock, places where the living world has forgotten its own foundations. Hermes moves with a quiet, unhurried confidence. For him, scholars have suggested, this is a daily commute. For you, it is the unraveling of the final mystery, a journey into the absolute unknown. Ahead, carried on the damp, cold air, you begin to hear a new sound. Not the muffled sounds of life, but a low, the sound of water moving slowly, heavily. The sound of a river at the edge of the world. You have arrived. Before you lies a body of water, black and slow as oil, reflecting no light, and on its near bank, a vast, silent crowd of whispering shadows waits, their forms restless and agitated. Hermes halts at the edge of the gravelly shore. This is as far as he goes. His duty, as the psychopomp, is to deliver the souls to this threshold. The rest of the journey, he seems to communicate with a simple, final glance, is yours to make. He gives you a silent nod, a look of professional finality that is neither encouraging nor dismissive, and then turns, vanishing back into the deep shadows from which you came, as quietly as he appeared. You are now truly among the dead. The crowd on the riverbank is vast, stretching as far as your new eyes can see into the misty gloom. The souls cluster together, their forms flickering and indistinct, like heat haze on a summer road. They are agitated, constantly shifting, their collective presence creating a low, rustling whisper, like the sound of 1,000 dry leaves skittering across pavement. These, you realize with a dawning, detached understanding, are the asphodel, the unburied. They are the souls of sailors whose bodies were lost to the sea, of soldiers left to rot on a forgotten battlefield, of the poor and the friendless who had no family to perform the proper rites. They cannot pay the ferryman, so they wait. For 100 years, the poets said, they must wander this bleak and desolate shore, their only company the endless, patient regret that emanates from them like a cold fog. Then, through the thick gray mist that hangs over the water, a shape emerges. It is a simple skiff, a flat-bottomed boat made of wood so dark and weathered it seems to have been carved from the darkness itself. At its stern stands a figure, his form stooped and powerful. An old man, gnarled and grim, with a matted, tangled gray beard that covers most of his chest, and eyes that burn with a dim, cold light. They are eyes that seem to hold the weariness of ages, of seeing an endless stream of souls pass before him. This is Charon, the ferryman of the Styx. He does not call out. He does not greet you. He simply poles his boat to the shore, the wood of the hull scraping softly on the black gravel, a sound that cuts through the ceaseless whisper. He is not a monster, not a demon. Historians describe him more as a functionary, a grim, unyielding bureaucrat of the abyss. His gaze, heavy and dismissive, sweeps over the restless crowd, seeing them not as souls full of lost stories, but as cargo to be processed. He ignores the whispering shades of the unburied. He is looking only for those who can pay the fare. You feel a strange, phantom sensation, a weight in a mouth you no longer have, a familiar, metallic coldness. It is the obol, the small bronze coin your family so carefully placed there. It is your ticket, your passage. You feel a gentle, internal pull, and you drift forward, separating yourself from the vast, lamenting crowd of the unlamented. Charon's cold eyes fix on you. He is silent, but his gaze is an undeniable demand. He extends a calloused, spectral hand, palm up. The skin is like cracked leather, the knuckles swollen, a hand made for hard, endless labor. You don't have to think. You don't have to act. The essence of the coin, its cold, metallic memory, the weight of its purpose, passes from you to him. It is not a physical transaction, but a transfer of intent. He grunts, a low, rough sound of grim satisfaction, and gestures with a jerk of his head toward the empty boat. You step aboard. The moment your ethereal form is fully over the gunwale, the moment you are settled on the dark, damp wood of the skiff, you know, with a finality that eclipses everything that has come before, that there is no going back. The world of the living, of sunlight and warm bread and your wife's gentle hand, is now truly and irrevocably a memory. The boat pushes off into the black river, leaving the whispering, desolate crowd behind, and for the first time, you are sailing on the waters of the dead. This river, the one you now glide across, is the Acheron, the river of woe. The water does not sparkle or reflect the faint, ghostly light that emanates from the cavern's unseen ceiling. It seems to absorb it, to drink the light and leave only darkness behind. The water is thick, cold, and utterly silent, save for the rhythmic dip and pull of Charon's long pole as he expertly navigates the sluggish current. It is a sound that becomes the new metronome of your existence, a slow, steady, funereal beat. As you glide across the impossibly smooth surface, you look down into its inky depths. You see no fish, no weeds, no life of any kind. You see only faces, pale, fleeting, and translucent. They rise from the depths for a moment before dissolving back into the blackness. The faces of those who have made this crossing before you, millions upon millions of them, their expressions lost in the eternal current. It is not a river of water, but of sorrow. Every tear shed in the world above for the dead, the poet said, every drop of grief and lamentation eventually finds its way here, feeding this great, silent artery of woe. You are floating on an ocean of human sadness. The far shore is still shrouded in a thick, persistent mist, but you are beginning to hear new sounds, carried on the damp, cold air. These are not the sounds of life, but the emotional echoes of this place. To your left, far in the distance, you hear a faint, constant weeping, a chorus of despair that never ceases. That, you understand instinctively, is the sound of Cocytus, the river of lamentation, flowing somewhere in the darkness. To your right, a low, angry crackling, like a great bonfire that gives off no heat and no light, only a sound of perpetual rage. That is Phlegethon, the river of fire, which is said to circle the deepest parts of this realm, a barrier of liquid flame, and woven through all of it, a powerful, oath-bound silence, a stillness so profound it feels like a presence. That is the mighty Styx, the river of hatred, the river so sacred that even the gods of Olympus swear their most unbreakable vows upon its name. For to break such an oath is to face a punishment beyond imagination. You are not navigating a physical landscape. You are navigating an emotional geography, a place where feelings have become tangible things, where sorrow is a river and rage is a fire. The journey feels as though it takes an eternity, and yet, in another sense, it takes no time at all. In this place, time itself seems to behave differently. Then the bow of the skiff scrapes against another shore. The sound is different this time. Not the soft crunch of gravel, but the hard, grating sound of wood on solid rock. This shore is a single, massive slab of dark, wet stone that slopes down into the black water. Charon does not look at you. He does not offer a word of farewell or instruction. His part in your story is over. He is already turning his boat, his powerful shoulders straining as he pulls the skiff back into the mist, ready for the next passenger, the next coin. His work never, ever ends. You step out onto the rock. It is cold, firm, and real under your phantom feet. You have arrived. You are now officially and completely in the realm of Hades, the kingdom of the dead. As you stand there, a lone, shimmering wisp on the dark shore, a low growl echoes from the shadows ahead. It is a sound that is not made by one throat, but by three, a deep, guttural, overlapping rumble that seems to vibrate in the very stone beneath you. From the gloom, a massive shape resolves itself, emerging from the deep shadows with a slowness that speaks of immense power held in reserve. It is a dog, but a dog of impossible mythological scale, larger than any war horse, its muscles moving like shifting rock beneath a coat of dark, bristly fur. It has 3 heads, each one perfectly formed and utterly alert, their 6 eyes glowing like hot embers in the perpetual twilight. A mane, not of fur, but of living, writhing snakes, hisses softly around its 3 powerful necks. Their small, forked tongues taste. Its tail is not a tail at all, but a thick, muscular serpent, its fanged mouth open and ready to strike. This is Cerberus, the hound of Hades, the guardian at the gate. He is not here to stop you from entering. His job, his eternal, thankless, and unwavering job, is to make sure no one who has entered ever leaves. The 3 heads watch you as one, a trinity of gazes that seems to penetrate your very essence. Their attention is complete, absolute. The head on the left, its lip curled back in a silent snarl, seems to see your past. It sees Lysinus the scribe, hunched over his scrolls. It sees the faint sheen of sweat on your brow in the Athenian summer, the ink stains on your fingers, the quiet satisfaction of a perfectly balanced sentence. It sees a life of observation, of recording the deeds of others, a small, quiet life lived largely indoors. The central head, the largest of the three, fixes its gaze on your present state. It sees you not as a man, but as a psyche, a disembodied wisp of consciousness, a formless shimmer full of a quiet, detached uncertainty. It sees your lack of a physical body, your weightlessness, your new and fragile state of being. The third head on the right seems to gaze right through you, beyond you, into the endless stillness that awaits. It is not judging you. It is simply measuring your capacity for this new reality. It is looking for acceptance. Cerberus does not bark. He does not attack. He simply observes. He is the first true test of the underworld, a test not of strength or of courage, but of acceptance. You are dead. You belong here now. If you were to recoil in terror, if you were to turn and run for Charon's ferry, he would move with a speed that would belie his immense size. But you do not. You stand your ground, a humble wisp of smoke before this terrifying, magnificent creature, and you accept his gaze. You have no fight left in you, no desire to return. The world of the living is a story that has already been written. You are merely an epilogue. You accept your place. You accept the finality of the black river behind you and the immense, shadowy kingdom before you. After a moment that stretches for an age, a moment of absolute stillness and silent scrutiny, the great beast seems the low, three-toned growl that has been vibrating through the stone softens to a low, continuous rumble, like a distant, contained earthquake. He shifts his colossal weight, his claws scraping faintly on the rock. With a lazy flick of his serpent tail, he turns his three heads away from you, his duty of inspection complete. He has acknowledged you, he has processed you, you may pass. You drift forward, past his massive flank, feeling the phantom heat that radiates from his body, hearing the soft, constant hiss of the snakes in his mane. The gate, which is not a physical gate of wood or iron, but the simple space he was guarding, is now open. Ahead of you lies a great, echoing hall, its entrance a massive, dark archway carved from the living rock. The air grows heavy, not with cold, but with the sheer weight of judgment, and as you drift inside, you see three thrones at the far end of the hall, occupied by solemn, ancient king. You float into a hall so vast that its ceiling is lost in impenetrable shadow. Sound behaves strangely here. The faint whisper of your own passage seems to echo infinitely, yet the silence itself is heavy, pressing. It is not an ornate hall. There are no tapestries, no gilded columns, no mosaics celebrating the triumphs of gods or men. The walls are bare, dark stone, worn smooth by eons of silent observation. Before you, raised on a simple stone dais, sit three figures on simple carved thrones. They are immense, their forms radiating an aura of ancient gravity. These are not gods born of chaos and divine ichor. They were once mortal kings, men who lived and ruled in the world above, famed for their unwavering wisdom and their unshakable justice. Now they are the arbiters of the dead, their service eternal. On the left sits Rhadamanthus, who, according to the Thales you once copied, judges the souls who come from the east. In the center, his face the most severe and thoughtful, sits Minos, the former king of Crete, now the chief justice of the underworld. On the right is Aeacus, a king once so pious the gods called on him to mediate their own disputes, who now weighs the lives of those who arrive from the west. Their faces are impassive, like the faces of weathered statues, etched with the profound gravity of their endless task. There is no book before them in which your deeds are written. There is no scroll to be unrolled. As you stand, a lone, silent psyche in the vast emptiness of the hall, your life simply unfolds. It unspools in the space before their ancient eyes, not as a narrative, but as a vast, intricate tapestry of moments. And it is not the grand moments that are given prominence, not the things you thought mattered, not the day you married, nor the day your son was born, nor the completion of your... It is a tapestry woven from the threads of small things. A thread of light for the kindness you showed to a stray dog, sharing a piece of your bread on a cold morning. A dark, tangled thread for the lie you told your brother about a broken pot when you were both boys. A small deceit that you had long forgotten, but which the tapestry remembers. A thread of warm gold for the patient hours you spent teaching a neighbor's child to read, guiding their small hand as they formed the letters. A murky, green thread for the sharp pang of envy you felt for a richer merchant. A secret bitterness you never spoke aloud but which stained a simple, satisfying thread of deep blue for the quiet, private satisfaction of a perfectly scripted line of poetry. A pleasure known only to you. Your life was not heroic. You did not fight at Troy. You did not outwit a monster or consult an oracle. You simply lived. As a scribe, you spent your life recording the great deeds of others. Now, your own quiet, unremarkable deeds are being read by the most discerning eyes in all of creation. The three judges do not speak to you. They do not need to. They confer in silent glances, their ancient eyes communicating volumes. They are not looking for perfection. They know that is not the nature of mortals. They are looking for balance. Was your life on the whole one of piety? Not of grand sacrifice, but of simple, daily reverence? Did you honor the gods with the proper offerings, however small? Did you honor your parents in their old age? Did you respect the sacred laws of hospitality, welcoming the stranger and offering them a place by your fire? Did you live your quiet life with more kindness than cruelty, more honesty than deceit, more contentment than envy? For you, Lysinus the scribe, the great cosmic scales that weigh your life do not tip dramatically. They are not weighed down by great, unforgivable evil, nor are they lifted high by spectacular, heroic virtue. They tremble for a moment, a lifetime of small choices hanging in the balance, and then they settle, level, perfectly quietly level. Minus, the central judge, the one whose gaze seems to have pierced every secret corner of your heart, gives a slow, deliberate nod. Your fate is decided. It is not a punishment, it is not a reward. It is a placement. It is the finding of your proper place in the grand, ordered system of the cosmos. As the judge's nod settles the matter, a path opens before you. But the path immediately splits into three. One way leads toward a field of blinding, golden light, from which you can hear the faint, distant sound of joyful music. Another leads down, into a pit of fire and darkness, and from its depths, you can hear the echoes of pain and eternal screams. And the third path, the one in the middle, the third path leads straight ahead, into a vast meadow shrouded in gray mist. Without a touch, without a word, you feel a gentle, inexorable guidance, and you are drawn toward the middle path. This is the destination for most, the final home of the vast, silent majority. This is the Asphodel Meadows. It is not a paradise, it is not a hell, it is an eternal twilight. A vast gray plain that stretches to a horizon you can never seem to reach. The ground is soft, like ash, and here and there, growing in sparse, lonely clusters, are pale, ghostly flowers. The asphodel. Their petals are translucent, their stems the color of smoke, and they give off no scent. This is the Greek afterlife for the average soul. For the person who was not wicked enough for Tartarus, but not heroic enough for Elysium. It is the neither here nor there. It is not torment, it is simply an endless quiet fading. An eternity of being unremarkable. Here there are no great passions, no deep sorrows, no bright joys. There is only a placid, unending neutrality. As you drift into the meadow, leaving the hall of judgment far behind, other shades turn their featureless faces toward you. There are thousands of them, millions, an endless crowd wandering aimlessly through the gray twilight. They are the souls you may have known in life. Your father, his shoulders stooped in the same way you remember, but his face is a blur. A neighbor who always had a loud laugh, but here he is silent, his form indistinct. The baker from down the street, whose hands were always covered in flour, is now just another shimmering, gray shape among the countless others. But there is no recognition in their gaze as they pass you. There are no reunions here. They are shades, stripped of their vibrant memories, of their sharp-edged identities. They flutter like bats, the poet Homer wrote, a description you once copied and now understand with a profound, hollow clarity. They squeak and gibber, making small, meaningless sounds, but they do not speak. They have no stories to tell. Their stories are over. You see the shade of a great warrior, his form still faintly outlined by the ghost of a magnificent helmet and shield. Perhaps it is even the great Achilles himself, a hero whose rage and glory you chronicled on expensive papyrus. But here, in the great leveling field of asphodel, he is no greater than the shade of a beggar who died in an alley. His strength is gone, his fame is a forgotten word. His passions are cooled to this same, neutral gray. In death, all are made equal in their anonymity. They wander without purpose, without memory of who they were. Their only activity, this endless, gentle, and utterly meaningless drifting. It is a state of being that is the ultimate opposite of life. Life is struggle and change and feeling. This is stillness. But before you can join them, before you can fully become one of the nameless, fluttering shades, there is one final threshold to cross. One last feature of this vast, gray landscape. A river flows gently at the edge of the meadows, separating the path from the main fields. Its water is not black like the Acheron, but perfectly clear. It makes a soft, lulling sound as it moves over smooth, gray stones. This is Lethe, the river of forgetfulness. To drink from its waters is the final act of the dead. It is to wash away your life, your name, your joys, your sorrows. It is to release the burden of having been you. Some of the mystery cults, you recall from your studies, warned against it. They taught their initiates to seek out a different spring, the pool of memory, to hold on to who they were and thus achieve a different kind of afterlife. But for most, for the ordinary souls destined for asphodel, for you it is not a curse. It is the final mercy. To wander for eternity with the full, sharp memory of the sun on your skin, of your wife's smile, of your child's laughter, while being unable to feel anything at all. That would be the true torment. Here oblivion is offered as a gift. The choice, they say, is yours. Do you hold onto the memory of Lysinus the scribe, a name that already feels like it belongs to a stranger? Or do you let him go and find peace in the quiet of utter non-remembrance? You kneel by the water's edge, see your own faint, shimmering reflection rippling on its surface, and you make your choice. You choose to drink. It is not a choice born of despair, but of a deep, calm understanding. The story of Lysinus is complete. There is no need for its author to linger. You cup your phantom hands, a gesture born of a lifetime of habit, and bring the water of Lethe to your lips. It is cool and it has no taste. But as you drink, as the clear water of oblivion enters your essence, you feel a great and profound unburdening. It is like a heavy cloak, worn for a lifetime, finally slipping from your shoulders. The image of your wife's face, the way her eyes would crinkle at the corners when she smiled, it softens, blurs, and fades into a gentle, anonymous warmth. The memory of the sun on your skin on a hot afternoon in the Agora, it cools into nothing. The weight of your regrets, the small shames and the secret prides, the warmth of your few, simple triumphs, they all dissolve like salt in water, leaving behind a perfect, placid calm. The name Lysinus becomes a sound without meaning, an echo in an empty room, and then even the echo fades. The story you were is over. The ink is finally, completely dry. You rise from the riverbank. You are lighter now, not just physically, but spiritually. The last vestiges of your mortal self, the anchors of memory and identity that tied you to a specific time and place, have been washed away. You are now a shade, a whisper, an echo. No longer the observer, but a part of the observed. You turn and drift into the endless expanse of the asphodel meadows, no longer a newcomer, but a resident. You join the silent, fluttering crowd, your form indistinguishable from the millions of others. You are home, not a home of warmth and fire, of love and familiar objects, but a home of quiet, eternal, undemanding. There is no more striving, no more fear of the future or regret for the past, no more longing for what you cannot have. There is only being, a simple, neutral, unending state of existence. And here in this place beyond time, beyond memory, you will remain, one whisper among millions, a quiet note in the grand, unending, silent symphony of the journey is over, the great descent is complete, the scribe has laid down his pen. Rest now, your story has been told. If this quiet journey is helping you to unwind, feel free to let your presence be known by liking this telling. It helps us guide more weary travelers to these quiet shores. It is a strangely comforting thought to know that we are all drifting off together. Now, let your mind empty. Let the last thoughts of the day drink from the cool waters of Lethe. Let go. The world of the gods and the dead can seem complex, a tangled web of names and places. But at its heart, the Greek underworld was a place of profound order. It was a mirror to the world above, with its own geography, its own rulers, its own laws. And while we have followed the path of an ordinary soul, yours was not the only possible fate. For those whose lives were marked by exceptional virtue, for the heroes and the demigods and the truly just, a different path awaited. Imagine for a moment that the scales of judgment had tipped the other way, that your life, though quiet, had been so filled with piety and kindness that it shone with a light of its own. Then the central path would have faded from view, and you would have been guided toward the one that shone with golden light. You would have entered Elysium, the Elysian fields. This was not the bland twilight of asphodel. Here, the poet sang, a sun and stars of its own shone in a sky of gentle hues. A constant, soft breeze, the zephyr, rustled through groves of poplar trees and across meadows filled with flowers that, unlike the asphodels, were vibrant. In Elysium there was no toil, no suffering, no memory of past hardships. Souls here retained their identities, their personalities, their loves. They spent their days in pleasurable pursuits. You might see the shades of great musicians like Orpheus, his lyre producing melodies of heartbreaking beauty. You might see warriors of immense renown, not fighting, but engaging in athletic contests, their spectral bodies moving with a grace they never possessed in life. Philosophers would gather in quiet groves, continuing their endless debates about the nature of virtue and the cosmos, their minds finally free from the distractions of the flesh. It was an afterlife of gentle, pleasant, and noble leisure, a retirement community for the heroic. But even here, there was a choice. Souls in Elysium could, if they wished, choose to be reborn into the world above. If a soul passed through 3 lifetimes and was judged worthy of Elysium each time, they could then pass to the ultimate paradise, the Isles of the Blessed, a place of eternal, perfect happiness, ruled over by the Titan Cronus, who had been freed from his prison by Zeus. It was a promise of ultimate transcendence, a reward for a life, or lives, of supreme virtue. It was the great hope that lay at the end of the long road. And what of the other path, the one that led down into fire and darkness? That was the entrance to Tartarus. Tartarus was not merely a place of punishment. In the earliest myths, it was a fundamental part of the cosmos. It was a great, brazen-walled pit, as far below the earth as the earth is below the sky. It was here that Zeus had imprisoned the Titans after the great war for the heavens. But over time, it also became the destination for mortals who had committed the most terrible of sins. Not just ordinary wickedness, but acts that offended the very fabric of divine law. Here you would find the great archetypal sinners, their punishments tailored to their crimes with a dreadful, poetic irony. You would find Tantalus, a king who had tested the omniscience of the gods by trying to feed them the flesh of his own son. His punishment was to stand for eternity in a cool, clear lake, beneath the branches of a tree heavy with ripe fruit. But whenever he bent to drink, the water would recede from his lips. Whenever he reached for a fruit, the wind would blow the branches just out of his grasp. He was to suffer eternal thirst and hunger, with sustenance always tantalizingly close. His name gives us our word, tantalize. His crime was a violation of the sacred bond between host and guest, between mortal and divine. His punishment was an eternal, unfulfilled craving. Nearby, you would find Sisyphus, a king so clever he managed to cheat death not once but twice. For his hubris, for believing his mortal wit could outsmart the divine order, his punishment was one of eternal, pointless labor. He was condemned to push a massive boulder up a steep hill. With immense effort, straining every spectral muscle, he would roll it almost to the summit. But just as he was about to succeed, the boulder would slip from his grasp and roll all the way back to the bottom, and he would have to begin again, forever. His punishment was not pain, but futility, the eternal repetition of a meaningless task, a perfect hell for a mind that prided itself on its clever escapes. These were not punishments for simple theft or common lies. These were punishments for those who directly challenged the gods, who violated the most sacred laws of nature and piety. Tartarus was a place of divine retribution, a warning to all mortals of the consequences of hubris. It was the dark and terrible cellar of the cosmos, a place of screams and fire and unending despair. So you have the three realms, the eternal gray neutrality of asphodel for the many, the gentle, sunlit paradise of Elysium for the few, and the dark, tormenting pit of Tartarus for the truly wicked. A system, you see, a place for everyone and everyone in their place. But what of the gods who presided over this vast, silent kingdom, the ones who gave it its name? The ruler of the underworld was, of course, Hades. He was one of the three great sons of Cronus, along with Zeus and Poseidon. When the three brothers defeated their father and the Titans, they drew lots to divide the cosmos. Zeus won the sky, becoming the king of the gods. Poseidon drew the sea, and Hades drew the underworld, the realm of the dead. It is important to understand that Hades was not a devil. He was not a force of pure evil, tempting mortals to their doom. The Greeks did not have a figure like the Christian Satan. Hades was a god of order. He was a king. His job was to rule the dead, and to ensure that the profound boundary between the living and the dead was never, ever crossed. He was depicted as a stern, solemn, and unyielding figure. He rarely left his kingdom, and he was not one to be trifled with. While the other gods meddled constantly in the affairs of mortals, Hades remained aloof, concerned only with his own domain. Mortals feared him, so much so that they often avoided speaking his name, instead referring to him by epithets like Plauton, the rich one, a reference to the untold mineral and agricultural wealth that lies within the earth. He was not the god of death itself. That was a separate, minor deity named Thanatos. Hades was the host, the king who received all mortals into his home eventually. His most famous possession besides his kingdom was a helmet of invisibility, sometimes called the Helm of Darkness, which allowed him to move unseen. It was a fitting tool for a god who ruled a realm of shadows and unseen spirits. But Hades did not rule alone. By his side sat his queen, the enigmatic and beautiful Persephone. Her story is one of the most famous and poignant in all of Greek mythology, for it explains not only the nature of the underworld's queen, but the very seasons of the world above. Persephone was the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, of grain, of the earth's fertility. She was a maiden of sunlight and flowers, spending her days in the sun-drenched fields of the living world. One day, as she was gathering flowers, Hades, who had fallen in love with her, burst forth from a chasm in the earth in his dark chariot and abducted her, pulling her down into his shadowy kingdom to be his bride. Demeter was overcome with grief. She wandered the earth searching for her daughter, and in her sorrow, she neglected her duties. The crops failed. The earth grew cold and barren. Famine spread across the land, and the cries of starving mortals reached Olympus. Zeus, seeing that the world of men would be destroyed, finally intervened. He commanded Hades to release Persephone. Hades, ever obedient to the laws laid down by his brother, agreed. But before he let her go, he employed a bit of cunning. He offered Persephone a single pomegranate seed, Hungry from her time in the underworld, she ate it. This single act bound her to him. Anyone who tasted the food of the underworld could not fully return to the world of the living. A compromise was struck. Persephone would spend 2/3 of the year above ground with her mother. During this time, Demeter would rejoice, and the earth would be fertile and warm. This was spring and summer. But for the remaining third of the year, Persephone would return to the underworld to rule by her husband's side as his queen. During this time, Demeter would mourn, and the earth would become cold and barren. This was winter, so Persephone became a goddess of two worlds. She was the maiden of flowers and the dreaded queen of the dead. She represented the cycle of death and rebirth, the seed that must be buried in the dark earth before it can sprout into new life. Her relationship with Hades is often debated. Was she a reluctant prisoner, or did she grow to accept, and perhaps even love, her stern, powerful husband and her role as queen? But what is clear is that she was a powerful figure in her own right, often seen as more merciful than Hades, a guide for those who, like her, had to navigate the passage between light and dark. Beyond the king and queen, the judges and the guardian, the underworld was populated by a host of other strange and powerful entities. There were the Furies, or Erinyes, 3 terrifying goddesses of vengeance. They were ancient beings, born from the blood of the castrated sky god Uranus. Their purpose was to pursue and punish those who committed the most heinous crimes, particularly patricide and matricide. They were depicted with snakes for hair and blood dripping from their eyes, and their pursuit was relentless. Even if a mortal escaped justice in the world above, they could not escape the Furies, who would hunt them down even into the realm of the dead. There was Hecate, a goddess of magic, witchcraft, crossroads, and the night. She was a mysterious figure, often depicted with 3 heads or 3 bodies, able to see in all directions at once. She was a denizen of the twilight places, the boundaries between worlds, and was a powerful presence in the underworld, often acting as a guide and companion. And there were the countless other spirits and minor deities. Hypnos, the god of sleep, and his brother Thanatos, the god of death. The Keres, female spirits of violent death on the battlefield. And Nemesis, the goddess of the underworld, was not empty. It was a complex, functioning society, a dark reflection of the vibrant world above. And yet, despite all its rules and its powerful inhabitants, the boundary between the living and the dead was not entirely impassable. A few mortals, heroes of incredible strength or talent, managed to make the journey into the underworld and return. These stories, these Catabasis myths, were some of the most powerful in the Greek world. The most famous was perhaps that of Orpheus, the legendary musician whose skill with the lyre was so great that he could charm animals, trees, and even rocks. When his beloved wife, Eurydice, was killed by a snake bite, Orpheus was so consumed by grief that he resolved to do the impossible. He would travel to the underworld and bring her back. He journeyed down the dark paths, and with his music, he accomplished what no force could. He charmed the grim ferryman Charon, who carried him across the Styx without demanding payment. He lulled the mighty Cerberus to sleep with his melodies. He stood before the thrones of Hades and Persephone themselves, and played a song of such profound love and loss that even the cold heart of Hades was moved. Persephone, remembering her own separation from her mother, wept. They agreed to let Eurydice return to the world of the living, but on one condition: Orpheus must walk ahead of her and not look back until they were both fully in the sunlight. He agreed. He walked the long, dark path upward, hearing his wife's faint footsteps behind him. He could feel the air growing warmer, see the light of the living world ahead. He was at the very threshold, his feet on the sunlit earth. But in a moment of agonizing doubt, fearing that she had fallen behind or that the gods had tricked him, he turned to look. He saw her shade just behind him, her hand outstretched. But as he looked at her, she was pulled back into the shadows, her form dissolving like smoke, a single, sad farewell on her lips. He had failed the test. The boundary was restored. He had lost her forever. Then there was the hero Heracles, the strongest of all mortals. For his final and most difficult labor, he was tasked with capturing Cerberus and bringing him back to the world above. Unlike Orpheus, Heracles did not use charm. He used brute force and divine favor. Guided by Hermes and Athena, he descended into the abyss. He faced down the spirits and even wrestled with Thanatos, death himself. When he stood before Hades, he did not beg. He demanded the dog. Hades, perhaps impressed by his sheer audacity, or perhaps knowing he could not stop him, agreed, on the condition that Heracles could subdue the beast without you. And so Heracles wrestled with the three-headed hound of hell, his immense strength finally overpowering the creature. He dragged Cerberus, growling and struggling, all the way back to the land of the living, presented him to the king who had given him the task, and then, as promised, returned the beast to its rightful place at the gates of the underworld. These stories are thrilling, but they are the exceptions that prove the rule. They emphasize just how absolute the division between life and death was meant to be. It took the greatest musician in the world or the strongest hero who ever lived to even temporarily bend the rules. For everyone else, for you, Lysinus, the journey, and so we return to you, a nameless shade now, drifting in the gray twilight of asphodel. The stories of heroes, the dramas of the gods, the geography of punishment and reward, these are no longer your concern. They are concepts as distant and meaningless as the name you once carried. Your journey was simpler, more universal. The slow fading of the senses, the quiet guidance of Hermes, the payment of the coin, the crossing of the river of sorrow, the gaze of the guardian, the silent judgment of the kings, and the final, merciful gift of the river of forgetting. This was the ancient Greek understanding of the final journey. It was not a story of fire and brimstone, but one of order, of process, of finding one's proper, eternal place. It reflected their values, the importance of burial rites, the respect for divine law, the fear of hubris, and the quiet acceptance of fate. It was a world beneath the world, a vast and shadowy kingdom whose existence gave a profound and somber meaning to the bright, fleeting world of the living. It was the ultimate acknowledgement that every story, no matter how heroic or how humble, must eventually come to an end. That every scribe must eventually lay down his pen. And now, as you drift in that eternal, peaceful twilight, let your own consciousness drift with it. Let the narrative fade. There are no more paths to choose, no more rivers to cross. The journey is complete. There is only rest. A deep, quiet, and profound rest. Imagine yourself now, no longer as Lysinus, but simply as a presence, a point of awareness floating in the silent, gray expanse. The concepts of Elysium and Tartarus are like distant mountain peaks shrouded in mist, real but unreachable, irrelevant to the gentle plains of your existence. Here in Asphodel, there is no sense of injustice, no yearning for a better fate. The passionate striving that defined mortal life has been utterly extinguished. There is only a vast, shared, and tranquil emptiness. You are a single drop of water that has returned to a calm, gray ocean. What did the living think of this place? For the average Greek, the underworld was not a source of comfort. It was a bleak prospect. The shade of the great hero Achilles, when Odysseus summoned him from the dead in Homer's epic, famously declared that he would rather be a landless peasant, a serf to the poorest farmer on earth, than be the king of all the dead. Life, even the hardest, most painful life, was seen as infinitely preferable to this strengthless, memoryless, passionless existence. Life was warmth, color, struggle, and feeling. Death was cold, gray, and still. This belief profoundly shaped their culture. It fueled a desire for Cleos, for glory and renown, for a fame so great that your name would live on in the songs of poets, and the minds of men long after your psyche had descended to this silent realm. If you could not live forever, at least your story could. But there was another, quieter current of thought, one that found a different kind of peace in the idea of the underworld. For the philosophers, the underworld was not just a place, but an idea. It was a metaphor for the soul's journey and the ultimate triumph of cosmic justice. Plato, in his myths, envisioned a much more complex system of reincarnation. He imagined that souls, after their time of reward or punishment, would eventually return to the river of Lethe, the river of unmindfulness. After drinking from it, they would be carried back up to the world of the living to be born into new bodies. The life they would choose, he argued, would be shaped by the wisdom they had gained in their previous existence. For the philosophers, the underworld was not an end, but a phase in a much grander cycle of learning and becoming. And for the common person, terrified not just of death, but of being forgotten, the elaborate burial rituals were a final act of love. The washing of the body, the dressing in clean robes, the placing of the coin in the mouth, these were not just traditions. They were essential preparations for the journey you have just taken. They were the last service the living could perform for the dead, ensuring their safe passage and their peaceful rest. The public funeral procession, the eulogies spoken over the grave, the offerings of food and wine left at the tomb, all of it was a way of saying, "We remember you. You were one of us. Your story will not be completely erased." It was a frail but vital bulwark against the terrifying silence of eternity. Now let go of these thoughts. Let go of the philosophers and the heroes and the grieving families. They belong to a world that is no longer yours. Return your awareness to the simple sensations of this place. The feel of the cool, still air that does not move. The sight of the pale, scentless asphodel flowers, the only landmarks in this endless gray. The sound of a million faint whispers, a sound like wind through dry grass, that is the collective presence of all who have come here before you. There is a strange comfort in this anonymity. In life, you were always defined by your name, your profession, your family, your duties. You were Lysinus, the scribe, the husband, the father. You carried the weight of these roles every day. Now that weight is gone. You are no longer required to be anyone. You are simply allowed to be. To exist without expectation, without judgment, without the endless effort of maintaining an identity. It is a release, a final, absolute Sabbath of the soul. Think of the great turning wheel of the cosmos. Above, in the world of light, the sun is set. The sounds of the city are quieting down. Families are gathering for their evening meal. The scent of wood smoke and roasting herbs fills the air. Soon they will light their oil lamps, casting flickering shadows on the walls. They will tell stories, sing songs, and then, one by one, they will succumb to Hypnos, the gentle god of sleep, who is the brother of death. For a few hours in their dreams, they will enter a world of shadows and spirits not so different from this one. Sleep, for the Greeks, was a small taste of death, a nightly rehearsal for the final journey. And in that thought, perhaps, lies the truest peace. This place, this state of being, is not an alien. It is the destination toward which all living things are quietly, steadily, and naturally moving. It is the foundation of the world, the silent, dark earth that supports the bright, noisy, and fleeting world of the sun. It is the final return home. Your awareness begins to soften. The outlines of the other shades become less distinct. The gray meadow begins to feel less like a place and more like a state of mind. You are not in the asphodel meadows. You are the asphodel meadows. You are the quiet. You are the stillness. You are the gentle, endless, peaceful gray. The final thought flickers and fades. The scribe has recorded his last word. The parchment is full. The story is complete. There is nothing left to do but rest. Rest in the quiet. Rest in the stillness. Rest in the dark. Your journey is complete. If you wish to take another, to explore other quiet corners of the past, subscribe for more descents into history. For now, let the silence hold you. Let the darkness comfort you. Sleep well. Sweet dreams. His warning echoed in the sudden emptiness of my mind. They are already listening. My unauthorized journey, my heretical data searches. I had been a fool to think they would go unnoticed for long. The system's immune response would be slow, methodical, and utterly implacable. The hunt was on. A cold dread, far deeper and more primal than the fear I had felt in the sump, settled into the marrow of my... The archivist's warning was not a prophecy. It was a statement of fact. The Adeptus Administratum was a slow, ponderous beast, but its memory was absolute and its reach was infinite. My 3-cycle pass was a countdown clock to my own erasure. The journey back was a fever dream of paranoia. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every distant clang of metal sounded like the sump which had seemed so terrifying on my descent, now felt almost like a sanctuary compared to the cold, orderly world I was returning to. In the lawless dark, you could see your enemies. In the world of light and bureaucracy, your executioner would be an algorithm you would never meet, triggered by a report as my service elevator ascended, leaving the stench and the chaos of the underhive behind. I felt a profound sense of leaving a part of myself behind. The Kaelin who had descended was a frightened functionary clutching a secret. The Kaelin who was now rising was the guardian of a truth that could shatter worlds, a truth that had already shattered his own. When the elevator doors opened onto the pristine, silent concourse of my own sublevel, the transition was jarring. The clean, recycled air felt thin and sterile in my lungs after the thick, organic miasma of the sump. The constant, even lumen light seemed blinding. I was a creature of the depths now, blinking in the unwelcome glare of the cage. And then I saw them. They were standing at the far end of the concourse, beside the entrance to the pneumatic transport hub. 2 of them, their forms were unmistakable, iconic in their menace. The black, gleaming carapace armor of the Adeptus Arbites, the emotionless, visored helms that hid any trace of humanity. They were not looking in my direction. They were simply present, a function of the environment, as natural and as terrifying as a predator on the savannah. They were symbols of order, and I was now a creature of chaos. My blood ran cold. I forced myself to walk, not run. My pace had to be steady, efficient, unremarkable. To deviate would be to signal guilt. I kept my eyes forward, my posture erect, every inch the dutiful functionary returning from an assignment. As I passed them, I could feel their helmeted gaze sweep over me, a passive, analytical scan. Did they know? Was my name already on their list? I reached my designated transport tube without incident. The hiss of the door closing behind me, the sweetest sound I had ever heard. But I knew this was not an escape. It was a temporary reprieve. The archivist was right. The machine was aware of its ghost. It was moving to correct its error. My hab unit, once a sanctuary of sterile solitude, now felt like a tomb. It was a trap. The walls seemed to be closing in. The single lumen strip a glaring spotlight on my... They did not storm my door. That is not their way. The Administratum's methods are more subtle, more psychologically corrosive. They let you sit in the silence, knowing they are coming. They let you stew in your own fear. They let you contemplate the end of not just your life, but your own identity. They give you time to understand the absolute futility of your actions. My terror was absolute, a high, thin screaming in the back of my mind. But beneath it, a strange, cold clarity began to form. They could take my body. They could break it, burn it, dispose of it. But that wasn't what they truly wanted. I was a mnemonic scourer. I knew what the punishment would be for my crime. They would not simply kill me. That would be inefficient. Death leaves a ghost, a memory in the minds of others. Their goal was total erasure. They would perform a mnemonic scour, a process that would wipe my mind clean of every memory, every thought, every trace of the being known as Kaelin. They would turn me into a servitor, my body repurposed to serve the very system I had defied, my mind a perfect, horrifying blank. And the song, the lullaby, the last hymn of a dead world would die with my consciousness. It would vanish as if it had... That was the one thing I could not allow. My own life, my own identity had become secondary. I was a vessel, a temporary guardian. The song had survived 10 millennia in darkness, passed down through a chain of silent, dedicated souls. It would not die in my head. My hands flew across the illicit data terminal I had jury-rigged, my panic giving way to a desperate, focused energy. I had to get the song out. I had to preserve it, to plant a seed of it somewhere that the scourers could not reach. But how? Broadcasting it on the general Voxnet was impossible. It would be detected and silenced in nanoseconds. Storing it in some hidden data cache was equally futile. The machine's search demons would find it. I couldn't fight the system with its own weapons. It was too big, too powerful, I needed to hide it not in the darkness, but in plain sight. In the light, my mind raced, sifting through the dregs of my own memory, the 10,000 days of consignments and work orders I had processed. I was looking for a loophole, a forgotten corner, a place of such profound monotony and insignificance that no one ever paid it in, and then I found it. A memory of a work order I had processed weeks ago, so mundane I had barely registered it at requisition M77 beta. Installation and sanctification of a new Series 9 servitor choir for the Cathedral of the Emperor's Blessed Silence. The Cathedral of the Emperor's Blessed Silence. It was a deep-level, rarely visited place of worship in a sector that was slowly being decommissioned. It was maintained not for a living congregation, but as an archival requirement, a box to be ticked on some master list of holy sites. The servitor choir's function was not to inspire the faithful, but simply to exist, to sing praises to the emperor. Endlessly in a forgotten corner of the world, their mindless chants a constant, unheard prayer to the machine god. Their minds, like mine would soon be, were wiped clean. They were blank slates. The plan was insane, born of pure desperation. I could not replace their core programming, the sacred litanies of praise they were designed to chant. To do so would be a complex act of tech heresy far beyond my limited skills, and one that would be immediately detected. But I could add to it. I accessed the source code for the Series 9 choir's vocal programming, a file I still had cached from processing the original work order. The code was a wall of impenetrable machine script, a sacred text of the Adeptus Mechanicus. But music at its core is mathematics. It is patterns, frequencies, and rhythms, and I was a man of numbers and patterns. Working feverishly, I began to translate the lullaby. I converted the simple melody into a recursive, subharmonic data loop. It was not a replacement for the main liturgy, but an undercurrent, a ghost in the holy machine. I embedded it deep in the source code, masking it as a series of diagnostic and resonance-balancing subroutines. The song would not be heard, not truly. The primary sound would still be the deep, guttural, monotonous chanting of praise to the emperor. But beneath that chant, woven into its very fabric, would be the faint, sad, simple melody of the lullaby, a subharmonic that the ear would not consciously register, but that the soul might feel. A sad, strange, inexplicable melancholy in the river of devotion. It would be a heresy sung by the mindless for no one forever, an eternal, unnoticed echo in an empty room. It was a pathetic victory. It was a meaningless gesture in the face of the crushing, indifferent power of the Imperium. It was a single tear and it was everything. I finalized the code. My target was the central programming spire that would upload the new liturgy to the choir before I had a window of mere minutes. I routed the upload command through a dozen layers of anonymizing proxies, a flimsy shield against the coming storm. My fingers hovered over the execute command. That's when I heard it, the sound I had been dreading, a high-pitched, metallic whine from the corridor outside my hab unit door. The sound of a multi-torch cutting through plasteel. They were here. The whine of the multi-torch was the last sound I would hear as myself. It was the sound of my world ending. My entire universe narrowed to the small, amber-lit screen of the ancient data slate, and the cold, blue glow of my illicit terminal. The code was ready. The lullaby was ready. I could hear the barked commands of the Arbite's officers in the hall, their voices distorted by their helmet vox grills. Breach in 30 seconds. My world narrowed to a single line of light on my screen, a progress bar. I hit execute. Uploading. The letters glowed on the screen. The cutting torch on the door screamed, a counterpoint to the silent prayer I was sending into the digital ether. 12%. A heavy thud against the door. They were using a battering ram now. 34%. I thought of the calligrapher, 427 Beta Psi. I thought of his ancestor, Erastus. I thought of the generations of their family who had guarded this fragile secret. They had passed the flame to me. I would not let it be extinguished. 58%, 78%, 89%. The symbols I had crafted were more than just code. They were a forgotten language, transmitting a dead faith into the very heart of the machine that had killed it. They were a seed of green grass, planted in the cracks of a ferrocrete continent. The whine of the torch was deafening now. The air in my small room was thick with the smell of burning metal and ozone. 99%. The door buckled inward, a grotesque flower of molten plasteel blooming around the edges. A sliver of black carapace was visible. Upload complete. The words flashed green. It was done. I leaned back against the cold wall, a strange, profound calm washing over me. All the fear, all the panic was gone. I had done it. I had become the thing I was meant to destroy, a memory that would persist. I had taken the last ember of a murdered world and hidden it in the Emperor's own choir. The door crashed inward with an explosive boom. The room was filled with black-clad figures, their hotshot lasguns leveled at my chest. I did not raise my hands. I did not speak. I simply looked at them, and for the first time in my life I felt I had already won. They did not speak. They were functions, not men. An algorithm had sent them, and they were here to execute a command. I was data to be deleted. Two of them seized me, their armored gloves like vices on my arms. They dragged me from my room, past the smoking ruin of my door. I saw them confiscate the ancient slate, their gloved hands treating it with a detached curiosity, an anomalous piece of evidence to be catalogued, and, eventually, I felt a pang of loss, not for myself, but for the beautiful object. They took me to a Medici facility deep within the Arbite's precinct house. It was not a place of healing. It was a laboratory of subtraction. They strapped me to a cold metal chair. A complex helmet, a web of wires and needles and arcane mechanics descended from the ceiling. I had read about it in procedural manuals. I had never imagined I would see one up close. A Medici in a sterile white coat, his face hidden behind a surgical mask, prepped a series of... He did not look me in the eye. I was not a person. I was a faulty component being prepared for recalibration. As the scour helm was lowered onto my head, its cold metal touching my temples, I closed my eyes. I did not think of my name, or my station, or my 10,000 days of service. I thought of I remembered the touch of the smooth, dark slate. I remembered the archivist's static voice in my head. I remembered the vision of a green world under a blue sky. I held onto the woman's voice, singing her gentle lullaby to a forgotten child. It was the last beautiful thing. Then the process began. It was not pain. Pain is a sensation, a signal. This was subtraction, a cold, clinical emptiness that spread from the back of my skull forward. It was like watching a library burn in reverse. The books did not turn to ash. They simply vanished from the shelves, leaving perfect, empty spaces. My memories of the sump, the cavern, the archivist, they dissolved first. The images of rust and decay and forgotten machines evaporated into nothingness. My memories of the search, the forbidden queries, the thrill of discovery, they blinked out of existence. My memory of the calligrapher, of the feel of the slate in my hand, turned to smoke. My name, Kalen, 734 Theta, the anchor of my entire existence, unraveled and became a meaningless string of characters. The song was the last to go. I clung to it, to the simple, haunting melody. It was the final flickering candle in the hurricane of my unmaking. The Medici's machine was relentless. It pulled at the melody, note by note, unraveling it like a thread. The woman's voice grew faint, distant. The words about the sun and the moon lost their meaning. The melody faded until all that was left was silence. A perfect, ordered, blessed silence. The final scene is not mine to see, for I no longer exist, but it happens nonetheless. Deep in the forgotten heart of Terra, in a cavernous, empty cathedral, a new servitor choir stands in a silent, perfect line. Their faces are blank, their eyes vacant. They are new machines awaiting their first command. A signal is sent from a distant programming spire. An activation rune glows on the master control panel, and they begin their chant to the Emperor, their mouths open and close in perfect, mindless unison. The sound that emerges is a deep, guttural, monotonous drone. It is the sound of pure, unthinking devotion, the official and only song of the Imperium. The sound echoes in the vast, dark space, a prayer heard by no one. But if you could be there, in that forgotten place, and if you were to listen very, very closely, if you were to filter out the crushing weight of the primary chant and focus on the spaces in between the sound, on the almost imperceptible frequencies beneath the drone, you might hear it. A faint, sad, simple melody, a ghost in the machine, a lullaby for a world that is, it's there, an echo in eternity. What is it really like to live on Terra? It is to be a ghost in the greatest tomb in the galaxy, a single, silent soul lost in the machinery of a dying empire. It is to know that your life is a rounding error, in a calculation that spans millennia. But sometimes, if you listen closely, in the deepest silence between the endless prayers and the turning of the great machine, you can still hear the dead sing. I have ended it, I corrected him, turning from the console to face him, my last pistol held steady in my hand. He stalked into the room, his power sword humming with deadly energy. You are a child playing with a thunderhammer. You have no conception of what you are destroying. I know exactly what I'm destroying, I said calmly, as the ground shook with a violent tremor. I'm destroying your dream, Inquisitor, and I am cleansing this. Our final battle was not a duel. It was a brawl in a collapsing tomb. He was a force of nature, his power sword a blur of blue energy, carving chunks from the machinery around me. I was a ghost, a survivor, dodging and weaving, using the shaking, dying environment as my ally. I fired my last pistol not at him, but at the power conduits above his head, bringing down a shower of sparks and molten metal that forced him back. He swatted a falling server rack aside, as if it were a child's toy, and kept coming. The countdown on the screen passed the 1-minute mark. The shaking was constant now, the roar of the overloading generators a physical blow. A lancing pain erupted in my side as a piece of shrapnel from an exploding console tore through my tunic. I stumbled, my vision blurring. Valerius was on me in an instant. He backhanded me with his armored gauntlet, sending me crashing against the main console. My last pistol flew from my grasp. The world swam in a haze of red. He stood over me, his power sword raised, its hum the song of my death. It did not have to be this way, Sergeant, he said, his voice laced with a cold, clinical regret. I offered you a place in the new world. I looked up at him, a bloody grin spreading across my face. And I offered you a Vestroyan's end, I coughed, blood. With my last ounce of strength, I lunged not at him, but at the console behind me. My bloodied hand slammed down on the master override switch, the final, manual trigger for the scouring protocol. The countdown vanished, replaced by a single, pulsing rune, ACTUATED. Valerius' single, glowing eye widened in horrified realization. He had no time to scream. The world dissolved into white light. The overload did not come as fire, or thunder, or pain. It came as silence. A silence so pure and so absolute that it was the loudest thing I had ever experienced. The crushing weight of the calm, the psychic hum of the entity, the screams of the dying, the roar of the generators, the hum of the power sword, all of it was gone. Erased. In that final, eternal moment, as the very fabric of the planet was unwritten around me, I could feel again. For the first time since I arrived on this cursed world, I could truly feel. I felt the grief for the brothers I had lost on a dozen worlds, a clean, sharp pain that I had held at bay for decades. I felt the rage at the Inquisitor, at the Imperium, at the monstrous lie I had served my entire life. I felt a flicker of regret for the life I had never known, for the Vestroyan snow I would never see again. I felt a surge of cold, grim pride for the choice I had made. All the emotions that the calm had tried to smother, that I had disciplined into submission, came rushing back in a final, glorious, agonizing wave. It was the gift of being human, returned to me, and they tell you they send you to paradise to heal. But the shocking reality of Xylos, the final, terrible truth, was not the corruption, or the heresy, or the sleeping monster beneath the ground. It was that in a galaxy defined by endless, soul-crushing war, the most horrific, unnatural, and blasphemous thing imaginable was a world without feeling. They had tried to take my pain, and in doing so, they had tried to take my soul. My final act, my final choice, was to feel it all, one last time. I died not as a hero of the Imperium, but as a man. And in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, that was a victory.